Critical Role Season 3 just launched, and Episode 1 dropped on YouTube last night, which means we have builds to break down. Spoilers alert for Episode 1, but I will only be talking about characters' builds and their races. I won't give away any plot-related stuff. Okay, let's go. The first character we meet is Imogen, played by Laura. Let's start with what we know. She's a level 3 sorcerer and is a human. We know that one of her sorcerer metamagic choices is Twin Spell. It's a powerful one that lets her target 2 creatures instead of 1 with a spell at the cost of sorcery points equal to that spell's level. As of yet, we don't know her second metamagic choice. We also see her telekinetically shove Sam's character at one point in the first episode. From this, we can deduce that Imogen is a variant human because she's using an ability from the feat Telekinetic. That's a really nice feat for sorcerers to have, giving her a little bit of battlefield control and also something to do on her bonus action if she didn't take the metamagic option Quicken Spell. So that's what we know. The question is, what is her subclass? This is where we have to speculate, but my guess is Aberrant Mind. Aberrant Mind seems the most likely choice, because at one point we see Imogen communicate telepathically with Travis's character. This is something that Aberrant Mind sorcerers can do. However, on a couple of occasions, she seems to detect the thoughts of people around her, and that is not an Aberrant Mind thing, and she doesn't cast a spell to do this, although it is very much on flavor for Aberrant Mind sorcerers. What my guess is that they've taken the Aberrant Mind sorcerer and sort of flavored its abilities a little differently to give her a bit more oomph outside of combat. Another option is she could have a magic item which is letting her do this, which we don't yet know about. The third and most exciting explanation is that she's made her own similar but distinct subclass of sorcerer. This could also explain the AC anomaly. Imogen should, looking at her stats, have an AC of 12, but instead she has an AC of 13. So maybe this is a custom subclass that either gives her proficiency with light armor or gives her a +1 to her AC. Or maybe, once again, it's a magic item which is giving her a few new abilities and a little bump to her armor class. The next person we meet is Lordna, played by Marisha, and this one is way easier to break down. We know for certain that she is an undead warlock sorcerer multiclass, because she uses her Form of Dread ability. This is a neat little undead warlock ability that essentially gives you a tasty hit point boost and also gives you the chance to make creatures you hit with attacks frightened of you. The undead warlock tends to be a debuff class that blasts away from a distance, and that seems to be exactly what Lordna is doing. She casts Bane to debuff her enemies and then starts smacking things with Eldritch Blast. So the only question then is, what is that sorcerer dip for? My guess is she started with a single level of sorcerer for that proficiency in constitution saving throws. Warlocks upcast all their spells to the highest level available anyway, so having them off curve doesn't really matter as much as it does with other spellcasting classes. It also gives her a couple of handy first level spell slots for stuff like shield or mage armor, and having those on hand really patches up a big weakness of the warlock class, which is the very limited number of spell slots. Alternatively, she could have just decided, you know what, fuck Critical Role, I'm gonna derail everything, and she's building towards the Coffee Lock combo, which is a Warlock Sorcerer multiclass that gives you infinite spell slots. Seriously though, having proficiency in con saves is a big deal if Lordna intends to be holding concentration on these big, game-warping debuff spells to keep her enemies contained. Next up, we have a couple of insane new subclasses, and this is where it gets nuts. But first, have some free stuff. I've put up a complete D&D adventure ready to play with maps, art, monster stats, minigames, NPCs, and everything else on my Patreon. It's free! Get it as a download by following the link below. It's perfect for a one-shot session or as a break from your main campaign or for getting new players into D&D. You also get a bonus map and a cool sub-race, the Castanut's Dentata, as a preview of this month's Adventurers Pack. And if you want more, you can subscribe to get amazing D&D content every month in the Adventurers Packs, like the new Oath of the Dragon Rider Paladin coming out this month. And also you can play in the D&D games that I run. Link below. Check it out now. Number 3, Ashton. So let's talk about Tal's character, Ashton the Barbarian. Here we have a totally new barbarian subclass, and my god, does it seem powerful. It seems to be a sort of gravity barbarian, and although we're only one episode deep, we've seen a lot of what this class can do. Firstly, they have an ability called Chaos Burst, which seems to be a lot like the Paladin's Divine Smite, in that you can choose to add on additional damage when you hit something. We also know that this extra damage is force damage, and I think we can assume that this will be limited to a number of times per long rest, possibly 2 or 3. Also, while Ashton is raging, we see them pull an enemy towards them. This is amazing for barbarians, because it's exactly what you want to be doing. You want enemies to be near you so you can attack them, and you want their attacks focused on you, not on your squishier teammates. This keeps your allies safe and your enemies within squashing distance. And finally, at one point, an enemy attacks Travis's character and has disadvantage imposed on them thanks to Ashton being nearby. Somehow. It seems like the Gravity Barbarian has an effect that when an enemy is within 15 feet of you and you are raging, it has disadvantage on attacks against anyone other than you, which is nuts. That is so strong. So far, this subclass seems very pushed. It might even be Totem Barbarian levels of strong, which as we all know is insanely powerful as a subclass. Finally, Ashton is an Earth Genasi, which is perfect for barbarians. It gives a +2 to Constitution and a +1 to Strength. So while we're speaking about new subclasses, let's talk about the most original character in the game. Fresh Cut Grass, the Automata Cleric. So, Automaton is a new race. We've never seen them before, but they basically seem to be a sort of robot-type thing. Fresh Cut Grass is also an entirely new type of cleric, because they use a channel divinity which does not exist, Sympathetic Binding. Essentially, what Sympathetic Binding does is it lets you, as a reaction, halve the damage dealt to someone else, and you take that damage instead. As a result, it makes total sense that when we look at Sam's stats, he's put Con as his highest, because he's going to want a nice, juicy hit point pool to be soaking up that damage that other people are going to be taking. Beyond this, though, we don't have much information about what the Automaton or this new cleric subclass can do. We know they can augment themselves with weapons, and at one point we briefly see a saw blade and a bolt firer is even mentioned. From all this, we can deduce that Fresh Cut Grass is going to be a support cleric that maximizes utility by reducing damage other people take and supporting with healing spells. Basically, typical cleric stuff. Then they can alter their body with different add-ons to either get in close and deal damage at melee, or stay back and fire bolts from afar. What we do know is it's definitely unique, and it could be incredibly powerful, with that versatility of swapping out parts. 5. The EXU crew. Alright, next up we have 3 characters that we've seen before. Ashley's Fern, Robbie's Dorian, and Liam's Orm. First up we have Orm, a halfling dex-based fighter. He carries a shield and a short sword, and looking at his AC, we can deduce he is wearing half-plate armor and did not take the defensive duelist fighting style. Being a halfling means no nat 1s, which is amazing, and Liam's optimized the build by picking up the boots of striding and springing, which essentially mitigates that big halfling weakness of 25 movement speed. It also lets him do a lot of flavorful jumping and spinning around. He is basically Yoda in battle. We know Orm is a battle master because he uses combat maneuvers. We see 2 of these in episode 1. Fainting attack gives him advantage on an attack roll and extra damage, and goading attack forces an enemy to target him next turn or else suffer disadvantage on their attacks. Now this means we have a combo in the party. If Orm ever lands a goading attack while Ashton is within 15 feet, an enemy will be forced to target him or suffer disadvantage, but they're also forced to target Ashton or suffer disadvantage. This means that as long as they're standing near each other, which they will be because they're the frontline fighters, enemies will have disadvantage on every attack no matter who they target, as long as Orm gets off that goading strike. I cannot wait to see this in the campaign. It is going to be a crazy moment. Fern is a fawn wildfire druid, and her wildfire spirit is a monkey called Little Mister. Wildfire druids are all about fire magic, and trading their wild shape to summon a wildfire elemental. Although we don't see Fern doing this in episode 1, we can be certain that we will see Little Mister the Elemental wreaking havoc across this campaign. Wildfire druids also get some very cool healing options as they progress in levels. For now, we can expect Fern to be all about blasting away with fire damage and other typical druid stuff like Entangle. However, as the campaign goes on, we might see her shift into a more supporting role, with spells like Revivify. Yeah, Wildfire druids get Revivify. Having 2 Revivify users in a party is actually amazing, because it means that if Fresh Cut Grass ever dies, she can bring him back, and vice versa. Also, on a side note, Fern is my personal favorite character. I think she's hilarious, but I gather that a lot of people really like Fresh Cut Grass, so let me know your favorite in the comments below. Finally, of the Exandria crew, we have Robbie's Dorian the Bard, and the first thing you spot about this build is that strength. Oh my god! Bards typically drop strength, as it's not a very useful skill for them at all. They attack with light finesse weapons, like the scimitar that Dorian uses, for which you can use dexterity instead of strength. However, in this build, we see Dorian's strength bonus the same as his dex bonus, meaning he can either attack you nimbly or just straight up beat the shit out of you. Then we see a very high con score of 17, which, again, is not typical. High con is always good, but it's not usually what bards prioritize. They typically go charisma, then dex, then con. Instead, Dorian just has these huge stats arranged really unusually. He can't even multiclass into cleric to get heavy armor proficiency, which is one reason why a bard might maybe want high strength, but it's not really a big deal. I'm sure this is just how his stats came out when they rolled them. We can also calculate from his AC that he is wearing studded leather armor, giving him an AC of 12 plus 3 from dex. Because he's an air genasi, he gets a 1 per day use of the levitate spell, which is very impressive, and we can expect him in combat to be boosting up allies with bardic inspiration and beating the shit out of people with that ridiculous strength score. Lastly, we have Travis's character Bertrand, who is also someone we have seen before. Bertrand first appeared in the one-shot Search for Grog, a little younger and a lot more powerful. In this campaign so far, he seems to be more of a quest giver, and I do not expect him to stick around for very long. I expect Travis to have another character he'll move into, but for what it's worth, let's break him down anyway. He is a strength-based fighter, level 5, not level 3, and he wields a Gambler's Rapier, as he did the last time we saw him. The Gambler's Rapier is an awesome weapon, giving you a +3 to attack rolls and damage at the expense of a -3 to your death saving throws. He has an unusually low AC for a level 5 fighter at just 14, meaning there's no medium armor there, just light armor. However, this build was made to reflect Bertrand's high age, and it doesn't really make sense that he would just be walking around in medium armor, so it does make sense. My prediction is that Bertrand is really only there as an upgraded NPC, to get the party going on a mission together, and we'll see Travis move into a new original build pretty soon. And that is everyone's build as it stands at the start of Critical Role Season 3. I am really interested to hear people's thoughts on the Gravity Barbarian and on Imogen's potential subclass. Both of those are probably worthy of a deeper dive when we get more information. Remember to like and subscribe, remember to get your free stuff from the Patreon, and yeah, I'll see you next time.